Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live. How are you guys all doing out there today? Guys and girls, I should say. Thank you all for joining us. I see lots of regulars out there. Kelly Patterson, good to see you. Grilled Mortal, good to see you. Jim Garrettson from Duluth, Minnesota. The Lettuce King is joining us today. So we're in for an exciting show when he joins in. Good to see you there, sir. Roger Penske's here. I better put my fingers on this thing so it scrolls. Trucker Harold's here? Harold, yeah. And did I mention Kelly Patterson? Kelly's here? Is his mom here again? Cool. I like it when she joins us. Jason Hall, how are you doing? Chef Matt, good. Container Guru's here. Craig Beats, JC's Trucking, hello from Reno. Oh, Hitman just got off the ramp at Rock Anvil Road in Arizona. There's where you want to be today. Lovely Arizona. I always liked it down there. Hello from Libya. Good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Muppet from Australia. Rick Rodriguez. Good afternoon from Virginia. Good afternoon, Rick. Internet's an amazing thing. People from all over the world. Christopher Van Dyke, how are you doing, sir? W. Gaines from Baltimore. William from Baltimore. Chad, what's up, Chad? What's going on out there, you guys? Lots of stuff going on in the trucking industry today, like there usually is. And I always scan through all the news articles I can find online to see what's going on in the trucking industry. And a couple of things really jumped out at me here lately. And the first one is, and I'm just amazed by this, in an industry that hardly ever changes in the way of improving, a mega carrier has actually come up with a really good idea, and I'm so impressed. I got to talk about it. And the mega carrier is USA Truck. They're a 1,700 truck fleet out of Arkansas, dry freight haulers, dry box guys, but they have come up with a self-dispatch system, and I'm impressed with that concept. Apparently, their drivers are loving it. I'd like to know what you guys think about that type of thing. I think it's great. You can pre-plan your week before you head out. There's a phone or an app they put on your phone, and the drivers can go on the app, pick the loads they want for the week, schedule themselves here and there and wherever they want to drive, and then after a week or two or whenever, they just schedule themselves a load home. And the only requirements are that USA Truck wants you to manage at least 2,000 miles a week under this system. It's for company guys right now, but they may expand that to include others, like lease operators, for instance, and owner operators. But what a marvelous idea, because it reduces contact and conflict with the dispatcher, probably the weakest link in the whole chain in a trucking company. And it saves the drivers time, because you're not sitting around, you're not getting this dispatch will call back in an hour. None of that. I think it's amazing. I'd love to know what you guys think about this concept. I can't say enough. Now, of course, there may be downfalls that we'll learn in the future. Like, if they're having a slow period and there aren't a whole lot of loads available, that system may suffer a little, and guys may end up fighting over which load to get. But that's about the only downfall that I can see in this. And I'm assuming that it's a first come, first serve system to the load. And man, I just think that's great. I think that's a really novel concept, and USA is really trying to take a step forward in all sorts of angles here, driver retention being one. I know the drivers will be loving that system. So good for you, USA Truck. And I don't compliment mega carriers easily, but I'm impressed. So what do you guys think of that? I think that's an amazing system.
Did you see the number of companies they mentioned that have it?
No, I didn't.
Well, you need to read that chat.
Now let me find that.
Schneider, Quality Carriers, they're listing them all.
Oh, well, that's a fairly new concept, but I like it. I like it. Can you guys tell me any downsides that I haven't thought of to that? Because I think that's amazing. USA Truck never had the greatest reputation. And probably almost everybody has seen that YouTube video of the USA Truck trying to do the U-turn because he doesn't want to go underneath the low overpass, the low bridge, and the guy just destroys the truck and the trailer trying to do the U-turn on this 2-lane road. It was one of the first YouTube videos I ever saw, and it just stuck in my mind. And every time I think of USA Truck after watching that video, I think of that because they've had some real characters, I guess, behind the wheel. But there is a positive step in the right direction. So I'm happy to see that.
Michael says, would the carriers inevitably have to lay off dispatchers?
Yes, and there's another plus. Carriers may eventually have to lay off dispatchers because they're not particularly needed as badly as they were before. They've eliminated the middleman. I'm always for that. And like I say, the dispatches are always the lowest on the rung. So yeah, you're right. It'll make their operation more efficient. They'll save money by not having to pay dispatchers. I think it's great. Excuse me. My friend the Lettuce King used to self-dispatch himself, but that wasn't quite the same. He used to dispatch himself from Chrome Shop to Chrome Shop, which, I can understand that, but the carrier we were working for at the time wasn't that impressed. Moving time, he says, that's awesome. It's like the Uber concept. Yes, it kind of is. It kind of is, but it's novel. It's forward thinking, and I like to see that in the trucking industry. Chef Matt says, I see a prime opportunity to screw drivers out of getting access to the system. Get a manipulative company. Game over. Yeah, well, I hadn't thought of that, Chef Matt, but yeah, it could be probably used like that, I suppose. Hopefully they won't, because they want to keep all their trucks moving. The more trucks they've got moving, the better. The more money they make, the more efficient their system is. So hopefully they're not into that. But we'll see. William Carey says U.S. Express has a lot of idiot drivers like USA Truck has. Yeah, I've seen a few of them on YouTube too. They got some real characters. In the rare instance where you need to break a seal, whom would you get permission from? Safety? Good question. I'm Kelly Patterson. I'm sure that someone's going to be available when you phone in to answer your questions. Not like a dispatcher probably could anyway, but. Yeah, another good point. But you'll always need a backup guy in the office when you do encounter stuff like that, questions you've got to get permission sometimes from someone in the office. So they'll have to keep some people online on the phones or whatever. But
what about crap loads nobody wants?
Yeah, and there's another valid point. Crap loads that nobody wants. Yeah, I imagine they may have an issue there too. Although it's all dry freight. Probably all their loads are probably created equal. We'll see, but it's an interesting concept. I like the idea, and so far it's working well for them. So,
ask them if they would do it.
Would you guys be interested in working for a self-dispatch system where you could pick your own loads basically at the start of the week, and if you wanted to be out for a couple weeks, that was fine. You could schedule where you were going to do your reset. You could schedule where you'd want to go. I'd be into that. I'd stay off the Eastern Seaboard. Maybe they'll have a problem that way.
It may be a $high system though, and are they going to cut the driver's rates because somebody's got to pay for this?
Well, Kathy says it'll be an expensive system to facilitate. So where's that money going to come from? She says maybe they'll cut the driver's pay. I'm saying all the money they'll save by getting rid of all the dispatchers should cover the cost of this system. But yeah, Container Guru. What about the crap loads that nobody wants? Yeah, I can see that becoming an issue. So we'll have to give them some time and see how it goes. Especially when things are slow, they'll probably have some crap loads just to keep everybody moving. So what's going to happen there? But bear in mind, everyone on the system is required to do at least 2,000 miles a week under this system. So, it's like everything else. Sometimes you got to take the good with the bad. So maybe that's how they'll deal with it. Access to the system wirelessly is not always possible. Tech is finicky. Chef Matt, another good point. Yeah, it relies on the internet and your reception. Figgy, hello from Little Rock, Arkansas. How are you doing? Mario says the loads are paying very well right now. And yes, revenue is up, even when you're pulling stuff off the load boards, because there's a lot of drivers never came back after this pandemic thing, and now the second wave is hitting, and there's a lower driver pool available, and it's driving the freight rates up, and you'll see carriers now are starting to offer raises again. Stevens just offered one the other day, a fair size raise, roughly 14%. So, Stevens are pretty tight with the dollar. When they're offering a raise like that, it's because they have to.
Well, there is an excellent point. Craig Beats, can you see it?
They're not doing this for the drivers, so what's up their sleeve? Craig Beats. Well, Craig, you might have a point there. I just figured they were doing it for driver retention because, turnover is so expensive for a big carrier. But, and I'm sure they're doing it for a drawing card as well, but yeah, I know. You're smart to be suspicious of a mega carrier, so that's a really good question. What is up their sleeve? I guess time will tell. Lettuce King says he'd like to pick and choose just for the variety. And or did I say 2,000 a month, Lettuce King? I meant 2,000 miles a week, not a month. I'm thinking of you and me. But no, 2,000 miles a week. Trucking Herald, I just got 2 guys hired on this week. Cool. So, what do you guys? Can you think of any other cons to this system that USA Truck is implementing? I think that's kind of amazing, really. And you're not. The thing I like about it too, then, is you're not prone to a dispatcher that doesn't like you, for instance. And that happens all the time. Dispatchers have their favorites, and that eliminates that problem right there.
So what do you do if you get to a destination? You got a happy destination, and you get there and you can't get out of there?
Well, that's up to you because you've got to pre-schedule all your loads. So if you get to a destination and you can't find a load out, that's something you should have done to make your week work.
You can only plan so far in advance if it takes you a week and a half to get there.
Well, yes, and then you're allowed to choose from what becomes available in the meantime while you're traveling, I would expect. But they're keeping...
I'm busy driving. I'm not looking for loads.
Kathy's busy driving. She's not looking for loads, she points out. But the system keeps their drivers in a circle where they have available freight because they know they don't want their trucks running 900 miles empty back to get a load. They've taken care of the little details like that. They don't want to lose money. Do I think this will last long? We'll see. We'll see. Well, it's been implemented a few months already, so we'll just see. We'll know in 6 months if it's still working for them or not.
Hitman says there could be a good old boy system. You bet your butt.
And Hitman says there could be a good old boy system in play there. Also, entirely possible. So time will tell whether this turns out to be an honest system for them or not. But right now, it sounds good. We'll see.
Sliding pay scales involved in regions, you bet.
Yeah, and Michael points out there may be a sliding pay scale involved based on the regions that you're running. And that's, like more money to run the Eastern Seaboard. I was just going to say that. And that's not at all uncommon. And I think I think guys should be paid more to go to the Eastern Seaboard, for instance, and also have the chance not to have to go, to be able to refuse the load and pick something to a better destination rather than having to go to Jersey or New York City. But Craig, yeah, as long as they do the 2,000 miles a week, they don't care how they get them. The carrier doesn't care how the drivers manage it.
You may want to address the trucker strike being canceled too.
Yes, there was,
Come and gone.
as I predicted there recently, that the truck strike, I believe it was last week's live stream, the truck strike that was scheduled for the 26th to the 29th has already been canceled. So I didn't think that would go anywhere, and God, it died before it even got off the ground. Joan, hello from North Carolina. I like to pick up my own pace, as trucker Craig Beats telling Hershey that. Love your channel, Doug Ackman. Thank you, Doug. Yeah, Lettuce King says, isn't that the Landstar kind of deal? Yeah, Lettuce King it is. Although most of those guys, I think, are owner operators, and they actually have to phone. Landstar calls them agents, but all they really are is load brokers that Landstar is connected with. So yeah, you can kind of work your way around wherever you want to go, but really you're dealing with load brokers, and every time you deal with a load broker, they take a slice, as you and I both know. But I can't think of that guy that we used to work with, Doug something or other, and he worked for Landstar. He took a great paying load up to like the Northwest Territories, and they had to run like 1,500 miles empty to get out of there. So he never factored in that whole thing. Paid more for Chicago too. Move on says, yeah, any of those big city centers where it's really tough to get in and out of, and the docks are too small and the streets are too narrow, I think it should pay more. I think it should pay a lot more. Mercer does that as well. Yes, Jeff Rees says Mercer does that. Mercer, again, though, is an owner-operator fleet, as I understand it. This USA Truck is doing this with company guys, company trucks. Justin Smith, hello from Midland, Ontario. Just getting into trucking. Good luck, Justin. I know you'll do well. What model of truck is that in the background, says Wayne Blue. I can't see that, the background. What is that, a Kenworth?
The Big Pete.
A Big Pete? Oh, yeah, that's a really big old Pete. I took that photograph at the Walcott Truck Show years ago. And now those guys, that was a car hauling outfit called Passport Transport. And that was their prime ride at the time. Beautiful truck. The first enclosed car carrier company that I ever became aware of. But yeah, amazing operation. Ryan, hi Dave and Kathy from Southern Ohio. Hope you're doing well up there. We are doing well. I was reading about the bridge down there that you guys have an issue with at Cincinnati over the river to Kentucky. That's quite the mess, huh? That'll boggle traffic up for months. And December 23rd, I think I saw they're hoping to have it open, but yeah, traffic will be a mess in the meantime. But there's a ring road around that, I know, but God, it seems to go miles out of the way. SoCal Sandman just joined us. Hello. He says, hi, everyone. Hello, sir. How are you doing? Glad you could be here. Jeff Rees says GP is an excellent company. Highly recommend them. We know that, Jeff. We like them, too. Those are good guys over there. They're another very progressive company, forward-thinking people, and that's what the trucking industry needs. Mega carriers do their best to be obsessively profitable as they can. Chef Matt, I bet they're terrible with tech support from India and buy terrible equipment. Oh, all the tech support's going overseas, and that's a real problem. Even our banks have tech support overseas, and I think that's nuts.
Lettuce King says that is 19
I can't.
1970, 288.
No kidding.
I even think it's older than that.
The Lettuce King's expert opinion says it's a 1970 288, and in the background there, that belongs to Passport Transport, and he is an expert on such things, so I'm inclined to believe him.
Model 288.
Yeah, model 288 needle nose, amazingly beautiful truck. Camaro LT1 says, I hate that bridge. And I'm from Louisiana, where Louisiana has lots of bridges, but he's talking about the one that goes between Kentucky and Cincinnati there over the river.
So back on topic here, I asked SoCal Salmon what if he would do self-dispatch. He said he used to drive for Landstar and we booked our own loads. Is the stuff dispatch system like that?
Yeah. The self-dispatch is like what Landstar does. The only difference there is, again, it's company guys picking their loads here and there, not owner-operators like at Landstar. So I think that's amazing. There's the name of that bridge, the Brent Spence Bridge into Kentucky out of Ohio. Benjamin Stewart, I saw a GP driver broke down on the highway this morning. That's not good, but they'll get him fixed up right away. They're really good about that stuff like that. Happens with all these new trucks. These emission systems are just junk. The lettuce, Craig Beat says, the Lettuce King has spoken. Is GP based out of Colorado, JC's Trucking? No, they're based out of Joliet, Illinois, but they hire out of all 48.
Back on track.
So, what else we got going on today? At the end of the day, has USA Truck now improved, in your opinion? If this system actually worked out, would you as a company driver entertain the thought of working for them just because they have a dispatch system like that? It's meant as a draw, obviously, and it's meant to keep their guys. So I'd be curious to know now if you would consider USA Truck after this latest move of theirs. It's a good move. Something else I wanted to talk about today is I was reading about, I try to keep up on autonomous trucks, as boring as that is. And I see that the truck media now, or these truck firms that are employing or trying to employ these autonomous trucks, coined the phrase safety driver. And I couldn't figure out what's a safety driver, some brand new term they've introduced. But what they're calling a safety driver is the guy that rides along in the autonomous truck to make sure that the truck doesn't go off the rails. So the truck babysitter, basically, and they're called a safety driver. And I would like to say about safety drivers, if you really want to rush truck drivers out of business, help out the autonomous truck guys. They call them safety drivers. I call them boneheads. Why would you deliberately help put yourself out of a job? Like, think it through. But, so that's my take on safety drivers, the latest phrase to come down the pike from the big trucking companies with autonomous trucks or semi-autonomous trucks. No, I would not consider USA Trucking, but I'll give them kudos for trying to improve themselves. Good attitude. Kelly Patterson, that's from. Yeah, good call on that. I would not consider them, but I'll give them kudos for trying to improve themselves. Exactly right.
We haven't yet addressed why they are doing this. What is the bottom line here that we're all missing?
As far as we know, they haven't announced their intention, but
Why would they? Do you have
they're
that spelled out for you?
driver retention they're doing it for.
Those people, not to me.
They're doing it for driver retention and to make their system more efficient, keep their drivers happier.
They're doing it because they have to.
Kathy says they're doing it because they have to.
Expand on
Anyway, I think it's a good move. Maybe USA Truck is losing so many drivers that they had to come up with something new. I think that's what Kathy's getting at, and that could be because they were kind of a bottom of the rung carrier. So maybe that's why they've gone to that system. But regardless, I like it. I called every place and tried to get a job. No one picked up. The only person who answered is Danny Herman Trucking. Boy, there's a company that's been around for a while. Those are one of the first guys that run into Mexico, and it was for auto parts. Danny Herman Trucking. Haven't heard that name in years. Is this sent dispatch also a percentage pay thing? Omnipotent Dan. That's a mouthful. No, I don't believe it is. No, it's a mileage pay base at USA Truck rather than a percentage pay. So, good question though. Good question. They aren't doing it to be kind to driver folks. They're doing it because they've been forced to into improving because there was no one left to work for them. That's Kathy's point, and that could well be the case. Regardless, it's nice to see forward thinking in the trucking industry because it's become so stagnated often. So I like to see it anyway. What else have we got going on here? I listened to a speech from the new FMCSA director. He's on YouTube. You guys can catch that. It was put on by Overdrive, and I've got big hopes for this guy because he's already corralled and made up a driver panel to sit with the FMCSA, and I think that's a good thing. Thank God someone's finally going to listen to truck drivers, and he's created a panel of 25 drivers from all different types of trucking, and he's going to get them together and be an advisory panel to the FMCSA. And man, there's forward thinking. There's another example of forward thinking, and I really like that. I've got big hopes for that. So I'm already impressed with this new head of the FMCSA. So that's a good thing. On the other hand, I can't understand why the FMCSA is doing recruiting for the mega carriers because they launched a program for under 21 drivers with military experience. So FMCSA the S is for safety. So I don't understand what safety has to do with recruiting underage drivers. And they're just going to refer them to a mega carrier. So, they ought to keep track of what they're supposed to be doing. But it's back and forth anyway. Do I think it's a good thing though, this advisory panel? Absolutely, I do.
You're slacking on there. Reading this quick little story somebody sent me off YouTube.
Let me read you this story that Kathy passed me here.
Kevin Lesh.
From Kevin Lesh. One good story, I was a few years ago, maybe 10, a friend asked me to stop by the bar in town for a beer. I told him I couldn't because I was hauling corn. I said I'd hit the Jake on the way by. Half hour later, I wasn't even a half a mile past the bar, and he sends me a text saying, "Nice." He said I made the glasses rattle on the bar. I told him the light was green, and it could have been even better if the light had been red, but I had a hole in the exhaust about the size of a quarter. So there's a nice story about the Jake waking everybody up in the bar and rattling the glasses. That's a cute story. I like that. Christopher Van Dyke. I'm 50 years of age. Do I give a chance? Have a chance. 22 years truck driving here. Oh, I'm sure you do, Christopher. I'm sure you'll be fine. Dan here. I'm not even going to try to say omnipotent again. I was a mechanic in the Army, and I could say that any military drivers I ever met were very bad at driving. Really? I am surprised and stunned by that. I thought the Army trained everyone really well backward and forward. Apparently not. Huh. Jeff Jeff Rees. I met a retired federal judge that became a truck driver from Jeff Rees. Well, that'd be an interesting career change. Lots of older people getting into trucking. I was talking to a former airline pilot who got laid off and is now a trucker. That's from Trucker Herald. All sorts of people are getting into the industry now because all sorts of other jobs are disappearing, and airline jobs, as an example. The airlines are running at about a quarter of the capacity that they did before this pandemic. This pandemic thing has affected the economy in all different walks. But when everyone else is getting laid off, truck drivers are still running. So there's great security in driving a truck for a living. One of the plus sides.
Okay, now let's stay on topic here. Can you maybe expand, maybe talk more about what other mega carriers are doing? This is what USA Truck is doing. What are the others doing?
Now, I haven't heard of any other mega carriers doing this type of dispatching program. We had a commenter earlier, and I've lost it now, saying that Schneider's, as an example, was doing this type of dispatching. But again, I as far as I know, that wasn't for company drivers. And that's what makes this so unique, what USA Truck is doing. It's not for owner-operators. It's not for lease operators. It's for company trucks. And that's the first time I've ever heard of that system being implemented with company drivers.
I know, but talk about the other mega carriers.
The other mega carriers just pick and assign their loads. Your number comes up, you appear on the dispatcher screen, and they don't care where you want to go, what you want to do, and you all know this. They just send you wherever it works for them. First up, and that guy's going to Manhattan whether he likes it or not. And there's what I don't like about the dispatch system, because they only care about covering the loads. That's all they're concerned with. They're not concerned with driver retention. They're not concerned with, the guy was supposed to be home this weekend. And there's a big thing. These guys at USA Truck now can schedule their home time. And what other mega carrier are you aware of where company guys can do that? Because I'm not aware of any. And that's a big, big thing. So that's one of the real pluses of this system. Every other mega carrier tells you where you're going and what you're doing, where you're going to lay over. There is no flexibility. You just work for them. USA Truck is changing their tune, and I like that. Yeah, Kelly Patterson says Landstar does something similar for self-dispatching. Yes, they do. But Kelly, as far as I know, those are guys that are owner-operators. So they, of course, get a little more freedom. There's no way it's a true load board. Abigail John Trucking. They claim that it is. Now, it's a load board showing only what USA Truck has available. But what you're suggesting is they don't put up all their loads. Well, they put up all their available loads. Some of their loads may be spoken for because they've assigned them to owner-operators or lease guys. But at least that's their intention. Hitman says, I heard on the CB in Amarillo that Fitzgerald is building an autonomous glider kit in a Volvo. There's got to be a law against that. Here's Joe Jones makes a point. And tell the company you have family in New York, and you'll never see New York. And that used to be the way it was too. I remember years ago talking to a couple of guys that were teaming in a Werner truck, a really nice cab over Pete, and I was admiring their truck, and I said, man, how often do you guys get home? And the one guy looks at me, rolls his eyes, says, we never get home, is what he said. Made me laugh. He was so forward and straight about that. He's just, they never get home. But they had a really nice truck from Werner anyway, long time ago. Anyway, back to USA Truck. Any more input on that? Love to know what you guys think about a system like that. What do I think of? Now, I used to say roll transport, Douglas Waller, but somebody corrected me and told me it's rule transport. I really don't know very much about them, Douglas. They've been around a long time, but I really can't say good or bad. I really haven't heard anything. It's probably a good thing that I've never heard anything bad, because all the bad stuff gets broadcasted, so they might be all right, but I'm the wrong guy to ask there. Big Dog, what's the best insurance company for brand new owner operators? Again, they change like the wind. They,
Q&A.
it's tough to know. You'd have to do your own research on that. The ones I used to use are gone now, pretty much. USA Truck has a lot of lease purchase drivers. That's from Container Guru. Well, I wasn't sure about that, Container Guru. I assumed as much, because almost all of the mega carriers are now. They're going that way, so they don't have to buy company trucks. And maybe that's why USA Truck is doing it as well. They've whittled down to so few company trucks. They want to keep those trucks moving, and they're trying to keep those guys happy. But yeah, all the mega carriers have gone now pretty much to building a lease truck fleet, which, it's a sad thing to see, but they're making money on it, and that's why they're doing it. So maybe that's why the change, just to keep what few company guys they have still going and staying there. Mark says, I like the idea of driver self-dispatching. You know what lanes work better than anyone. Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot less stress on a driver when he knows where he's going, when he's comfortable going where he's going. He's not worrying about traffic or whatever bothers him. And there's a lot of stress relief in knowing your routine. Some guys go for dedicated work, dedicated loads, just because it relieves some of the stress from them. And I get that. Douglas corrected me here. It's rail. Rail is how they pronounce that transport company. Am I going to park in protest, Scotty? Is this over the strike? They've ended that. There's no strike. They've changed their minds. They've canceled it. FedEx is paying $31 an hour right now, and UPS is similar. That's from Trucker Herald. That's pretty darn good money, isn't it? You'd almost be willing to wear brown shorts for that kind of money. We used to tease the hell out of UPS guys. The infrastructure for autonomous trucks is a long way off. Dylan, you are so right. And these mega carriers now are starting to see that. And that's why big carriers like Stevens and Schneider's and these guys are offering these pay raises, because they're starting to see that autonomous trucks won't be a reality in 48 states for the next 100 years. They can probably run them okay between LA and Phoenix, where it's dry and straight, but...
Okay, you've got a couple people commenting on your actual topic, so please ignore.
Okay.
Pay attention. The real Big John talking. Read what this guy has to say. Now we're getting into it.
It's going to be the same thing as Prime has. Take one of these 3 loads going to Long Island. It's a pseudo load board. It's a joke. Big John, you might well have hit on the truth there. That could well be the case.
The next one, move on.
Self-dispatching probably comes with a do not compete clause. I'm not sure how you mean that, move on. A do not compete clause, as in you're not taking loads away from your other drivers, or I'm curious to...
There'll be a pack of rules that comes along with this that you don't know about.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there are a pack of rules that come along with this, and maybe that's what you're talking about. The only rules that they've published so far is that you've got to do a 2,000-mile week, and you can be out as much as you want. And then, they say you may have to wait to find a load that gets you home when you decide it's time to come home. And maybe there's another glitch. Maybe when you want to come home, you can't find anything for a week, and then they force dispatch you into doing something else. And it's like everything else. Sure, there'll be catches, but the concept is worth experimenting with. That's my take on it. Michael says, I've been running dedicated for almost 7 years now. In my opinion, it's the only way to go. A lot of guys like dedicated because you know exactly what you're dealing with. You get to know who you're dealing with. You get to know the routes available to you backwards and forwards, where all the fuel stops are, where all the good food is, all those things. Lee Harvey says, IDA used to have a good entry-level insurance program. Yeah, good point. As far as I know, they still do.
What's that got to do with anything?
Today's truck tech, there's no reason all truckers could not be paid by the hour. Kelly Patterson, absolutely right. I'm all for that. They should all be paid by the hour. Stop the Wheels has been canceled by the founder. Sounds like he got caught in a lot of flack for suggesting a strike. Yeah, I gather they were an owner-operator group, so I'm sure the guy's carrier jumped all over him. Big Earl, Dave, how are you doing, Big Earl? What do you think of hauling freight for Amazon? My guess is that Amazon has a ton of freight and it's all really cheap. I haven't done it, but that's my guess. Because those guys are all about cutting costs, cutting money. So I bet you it's cheap freight, but there's a lot of it anyway. SoCal Sandman, 3,800 miles a week. Is that what? Not you can't be doing that, are you? Man, you're doing great if you are. That was from SoCal Sandman. Autonomous trucks can easily happen between truck stops on the freeway, but a lot of issues when there are people around. Yeah, there's so many issues with them that they won't be able to solve the problems for years and years and years yet. Hell, they can't even get the sensors in my Tahoe to work properly, and I'm holding the wheel. So I can't imagine how they can propel an 80,000-pound missile down the highway successfully. But we'll see. There's always going to be trash loads that nobody wants to take, and then the new guy has to take them. And maybe that's how they're going to work it. Maybe they're going to keep the dispatch to phone up the new guy and say, well, I know you don't see what you want, but you got to take this load because we got no one else that wants to cover it. You're the bottom guy on the rung, and the deal is 2,000 miles a week. There's nothing else available. You got to take that load. And maybe it's those Long Island loads that the dispatchers have to stick around because they got to deal them out because nobody wants them. I know I wouldn't want one. Yeah, that's probably right. It'll be the crap that nobody wants. So we'll see. But according to USA Truck now, they say it's a great system and it's working really well, and their efficiency is up and their driver retention has improved. But of course, that's them saying that. Maybe that's not exactly the case, but time will tell. SoCal Sandman, they train me pretty well. I drive 5-ton dump trucks in the Army, or he drove 5-ton dump trucks in the Army. I always assumed that military guys were really well trained. That's why they were so in demand when they came out of the military. What are my thoughts on hybrid trucks? You have an electric braking regen instant torque, but the complexity of a hybrid in the first place. I'm taking a wait and see attitude. It's like I like the truck that Nikola is trying to offer. They're running into all sorts of corporate trouble, but I like that truck, for instance. So I hope they get it to work. But if they're going to attract drivers, they've got to remember that part of what attracts guys to truck driving are nice trucks. And Tesla has just thrown that out the window because those guys have the ugliest trucks I've ever seen. They might be more ugly than the Volvo. So that's why I like the Nikola. At least I could stand to look at it before I got into it. If you do me this favor, you can dispatch yourself next week. That's from Joe Camp. Yeah. Did you ever meet a dispatcher that didn't want some sort of a favor out of you? And usually it paid crap and it involved a really ugly delivery. And anyone that's ever driven a truck has had that conversation with a dispatcher. Do me this favor and we'll have a really good load for you next week. Boy, I've lost track of how many times I heard that over the years. That's really true. The company I'm going to says no force dispatch. Isn't that similar to self-dispatch, Jim? No, it's slightly different because that's a good question. Force dispatch. What they're saying there is you can kind of pick and choose your loads, and it is kind of similar, I suppose. Technically, it's different, but because for no force dispatch still involves a dispatcher, whereas self-dispatch just involves a load board. But yeah, it's a good point. There are some similarities there. Yeah, I like that. Good catch. Ouch, you can't compare anything to Volvo. No, probably not. No force dispatch means you don't have to take a load if you don't want to go there. Yeah, that's exactly what it. Self-dispatch is different in that you've got to go somewhere, you just get to pick what's available. There may be the limit to self-dispatch board to only what they want you to see. Joe Jones. Yeah, that could very well be. Maybe they kept the dispatchers. The dispatchers still dole out the good loads to their favorite guys, and then they only post whatever's left. Especially for the new company guys, you could almost see that happening. So yeah, could well be. We'll find out sooner or later. We'll hear reports from all sorts of USA truck drivers. We'll call in and say, well, they said this, but that isn't what they did. But I'm taking the positive attitude here. I'm hoping it works out for them, and I hope it's a good, honest thing, because truck drivers could use some honesty. So that's what I'm hoping for. Time will tell. Time will tell. What else we got on the board here? Here's something interesting, and this is popping out in court cases now. If drivers are out on icy roads, for instance, let's pick an example, are out on icy roads when they shouldn't be, according to the experts, they become liable. Basically, as a professional driver, you should know when to get off the road. This is coming from the court system. So they're suing now and making trucking companies liable for guys that are involved in accidents when the weather's bad. Now there is a really unique twist that the court systems are taking, because they're so tired of these big rig accidents and involving four-wheelers and the lawsuits back and forth. They're now starting to take truck driving companies to task for being on bad roads, period. They say, you shouldn't have been there. You were involved with this accident. You're liable. And that's the position they're taking, which is a real switch from trucking companies saying, no matter what you do, the load's got to get there. We've got contracts. The court doesn't care. The court's saying, when the road isn't safe, you better get your trucks off the road. If the driver's not smart enough to know that, you haven't trained him, and you're liable. And you as a carrier, for pushing this driver on bad roads, are liable. So this is a whole new twist from the court system, and it's going to be a big thing. It's going to be a big deal. Different states are already seeing legal action along these lines. So there's going to be no excuse for being out in bad weather in a truck, and that's an interesting twist. And you've seen some of these what they call nuclear verdicts, multi-million-dollar settlements. Werner had two of them in 1 year there back in 2018 or 2019 to the tune of like $78 million, these nuclear settlements. And the courts are allowing it because the courts are saying you shouldn't have been on the road in the first place. And in the one Werner accident, it wasn't even their fault. They were still on the road. The road was icy, but they hadn't slid off the road. A car slid into them from across the other side of the highway, slid into the Werner truck, and Werner was found at fault just because they were there. And the court found that they shouldn't have been there because the road conditions were bad. That's a hell of a thing. That's going to change the perception of the law and trucking. So that's a big deal. Huge deal.
All right, Chad, it's about that time in the stream now where we start wrapping things up. So we'll do a couple more minutes here of just freelance questions, whatever you want to ask Dave in the meantime to wrap things up. And Dave, while we're waiting for questions to come in, you want to tell us a little bit about Friday's video?
And we have some upcoming videos. I've made you a lovely little list.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We've got some upcoming videos. We're going to have...
Start with Friday's video and then go on to the list there.
How it goes, huh?
This Friday's video is going to be about preparing for winter driving. Coming up later on, at various Fridays throughout the course of the month, are cold starting your truck. One of my favorite videos. Can't even read that. We're going to try to do some more interviews with trucking legends. We're hoping to have the Lettuce King up here for a trucking legend, or a trucking interview. But all sorts of stuff coming up. I just saw a question from Flight 000. PACCAR or Cummins? I would choose the PACCAR engine just because you'll get a better warranty out of PACCAR for the whole darn truck if it's got a PACCAR drivetrain in it. And that's what they do, and the longer warranty, the better. SoCal Sandman says, I have an ISX 565 horse, Cummins. And he says he loves it, so I assume it's been a really good motor. Cummins makes a good motor. It's the emissions problems that everyone fights with. But it's just mandated now. UPS guys are always speeding no matter what time is. They fly. I think, and FedEx guys are the same. I think they run them on too tight a schedule. And you know, when the weather turns bad and the road turns icy, it's always the FedEx guys you see in the ditch, the guys with the trains. There even used to be a song about them, about FedEx. Why are you always in the ditch? But I can't remember how it goes. But it was funny as hell anyway. Yeah, Trucker Hershey says sue everyone and hope something sticks. That's the way the courts are going, and that's the way plaintiffs are going. That's the way it is now, and that's why they're getting these nuclear settlements. Lee Harvey, time to chain up your flip-flops. Oh, man. I saw a video the other day of a truck driver walking across the truck stop parking lot in flip-flops. I'm a self-retired driver after 36 years. Totally enjoy the channel. Tim O. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Joe Jones, missed the old 3406 Cat. They were great engines. I watched something the other day where they'd taken this old Pacific logging truck and pulled out the original engine and had a 12V Detroit in it, that motor capped, and they put in an old 3406 Cat, 450 horse, few million miles on this thing running logs overweight. The thing was still just ticking like a Swiss watch. The GPS made me get lost. We're going to be talking about that in an upcoming video because there's always a problem with GPSs. They're not infallible. They're not infallible. Mark says FedEx is extremely dangerous. Well, they can be, I know. I used to see a lot of them in the bush. But those A-trains, those wiggle wagons, are hard to control on a slippery road. That's why they call them that. I don't know why FedEx insists on using that configuration. Probably because they're easier to break apart and load and unload, but I think they're a hazard on the road. They were illegal up here for a while. And when FedEx moved into Canada, they made them legal just to make FedEx happy, but I do not like that setup. Yeah. Lee Harvey, we used to gauge the road conditions by the amount of wiggle wagons in the rhubarb. Yeah, you knew it was slippery when you saw FedEx starting to slide off the road. My,
Wrap it up.
all right, one last comment. My biggest nightmare would be to emigrate to America and then have to drive a Volvo. Well, I should go. I thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it. I hope you guys all stay safe out there. Thank all the regulars there for joining us. SoCal Sandman, Kelly Patterson, all the guys, Lee Harvey, thank you. Take care. Keep the rubber side down. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the backhaul. Good night, everybody.